Couch Casual, where today we're going to be doing a 3 round AFC South mock draft. And this is going to be part of a little series over the next month or so while we wait for the draft to really ramp up. So we're going to be doing a 3 round mock draft, as I said, with each division. So today we're doing the AFC South because the first pick is the Titans, which is an AFC South team. And that's basically how we'll determine the order. But we'll just do a 3 round mock draft for each team in every division. So that way I could do a bunch of 3 round mock drafts and talk about teams specifically without doing a full 3 round mock draft. I would do more rounds, but I feel like I just don't know enough of the players in the later rounds and it'd take too long. So we're just going to stick to 3 rounds here. But without further ado, let's get into this mock draft. So, with the Titans pick at number 1, I do think there's a good chance they trade the pick. But I think if they don't trade it and they stick here, because we're not doing any trades yet, I think they go Cam Ward at 1. They need a QB. They need their QB of the future. Because it's not Will Levis. And it doesn't seem like they're in the running for like Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson. So I think they do go Cam Ward at 1. Now, we saw Carter go 2, Travis Hunter 3, and then Ashton Jeanty at 4, which is an interesting pick to the Patriots. So we could go McMillan, who I don't mind McMillan because outside of Brian Thomas, they got Gabe Davis, and that's pretty much it because they traded away Christian Kirk. I like Mason Graham. That's why I picked to the Jags a lot because they have their 2 edges set, and now you can add that young D lineman, interior D line, D tackle. I think it would be a great pickup for them. They could go tackle here. You could go Membo. You could go Will Campbell because they did have to trade away Cam Robinson. I mean, well, they didn't have to, but they traded away Cam Robinson last year at the deadline to the Vikings. So you could use a tackle if you're the Texans, or excuse me, if you're the Jags. They do have Walker Little, but then their other tackle's Anton Harrison. So you could go tackle and go Membo. They could go corner, honestly, and go with a Jahdae Barron. But I think the pick here is Mason Graham. I think they just need that the most. And you could argue that he's one of the better players on the board anyway. So not only are you going with one of the best players, but you're also going with a team need. So I like Mason Graham at 5. A little bit till the Colts pick. So we saw Will Campbell, Tyler Warren, Membo, Michael McMillan, Campbell, Emanwari, and Shamar Stewart go. So you could go edge rusher for the Colts and get a James Pierce, a Mike Green, a Jalen Walker. You could go linebacker and go with like a Jalen Walker because he can kind of help your linebacker and edge rush need. Could go Malachi Starks. You're probably not going to go. You could go Gray Zabel at guard / tackle. You could go with a Tyler Booker. But a pick I actually like here to the Colts is Jalen Walker. And the reason I like that pick is because, as I mentioned before, they need help at linebacker, and they also need help at edge. And Jalen Walker can do both for you to some extent. I think he's going to primarily be an edge rusher, but I'm not 100% sure. But even if he's not playing edge for you and he's playing more off the ball, they need that. They need help at that anyway. And they also need help at edge because they lost Odeyingbo to the Bears in free agency. So I like this pick of Jalen Walker to the Colts. So now we saw Jahdae Barron, Will Johnson, Kenneth Grant. We're up with the Texans, so Josh Simmons would have been nice for the Texans. But none of the receivers went, so we could still go with Luther Burden to Houston at 25, which I'm not mad at that. But a pick I've liked to Houston a lot is Gray Zabel, and that's because he's played tackle in the league, or in college, which the Texans could use help at. But the main position the Texans need is guard, and that's probably what Gray Zabel's going to play because of his shorter arms. But I've seen, tackles in college that have maybe smaller arms that go to play guard in the NFL. Some of them can give you solid reps at tackle if, you need depth or whatever. And I feel like the Texans need just any help at O-line, so to get a guard for them who can also maybe pitch in at tackle at times potentially, I think it's a good pick, a good fit for Gray Zabel to the Texans. Titans are back up at 35. Obviously, we gave them Cam Ward at 1. So Nick Scordon would have been great because we could use edge rusher. on the Titans. I would have loved Nick Scorton. Luther Burden almost actually fell to us. But a guy who hasn't gone is Emeka Egbuka, I think. Oh, maybe he did go. He might have went really early now that I think about it. He went to the Broncos at 20. So we can't go any of the receivers probably because Golden's also off the board. We could use linebacker and go with like a Demetrius Knight. Edge rush, you do have Landon Jackson, Princely. I don't know how to say his last name. Or do you go Alec Ayomanor? But I'm going to go kind of best player available maybe, or one of best players available. Because I would go Josh Connerly, because him being available here is crazy, but they don't really need tackle. They spent big money. They have now a tackle duo, Peter Skoronski and Dan Moore, I'm pretty sure. So they don't need, unless Peter Skoronski is a guard, I don't know. But they did sign Dan Moore, so that's a good. So I like Demetrius Knight to the Titans. They need linebacker. He's one of the better players available. I like Demetrius Knight to the Titans. At 35. Jags at 36. We gave them, obviously, Mason Graham at 5. They could go receiver. They could go with Ayomanor. But as I mentioned before, they could go tackle because Josh Connerly's right here. They could. That's probably it. They probably go Connerly or Ayomanor here. Since I didn't give them McMillan, I'll give them Alec Ayomanor to play alongside Brian Thomas. Because, again, outside of Gabe Davis and Brian Thomas, because they traded away Christian Kirk, they don't have anybody. And Gabe Davis isn't anybody that you're not going to draft a receiver because you have Gabe Davis on your team. Like, they could use help at that position, obviously. It says here, too, so. Even with Christian Kirk, I think they could have easily been in a position to take a receiver. But now that they traded him away, I like getting Trevor Lawrence, that second guy outside of Brian Thomas, with Alec Ayomanor. Colts are next up at 45. We gave them Jalen Walker to kind of fill that edge and linebacker need. Now, what to do with 45? They need safety, so we could go with a guy like Xavier Watts, or even, I don't think you go Kevin Winston here, so yeah, you probably go Xavier Watts if you go safety. You could get a true edge and go Princely or Landon Jackson. You're probably not going to go any of the tight ends here, like Harold Fannin or Elijah Aroro. Probably not one of those guys. I don't know if the Colts need corner. I don't think so because they got a Tarvarius Ward from the Niners in free agency. And they also got Kenny Moore. They got Jalen Jones. They've even Juju Brents. So they probably don't need corner, so you can probably stay away from that. Since I think Jalen Walker is going to be an edge, and I still think Kwity Paye could turn out to be a good player, I'm going to go Xavier Watts here at safety because another guy who could probably give you some reps at linebacker, just like Jalen Walker. So I like the pick of Xavier Watts to the Colts. Probably got to focus on interior O-lineman with their next pick, but I like that pick. Texans at 58, they got Gray Zabel to kind of be a tackle/guard, just give them depth at that position. The Panthers did just take Trey Harris right before us, which would have probably been the pick because we do need help at receiver. There still is Jalen Noel, Jalen Royals, who I really like, Savion Williams, Isaiah Bond. They're still solid receivers the Texans could take because they have Christian Kirk and Nico Collins. That's pretty much it because Tank Dell's out for the year. Hopefully he can come back eventually, but right now he's out for the year. So you're not going to go with one of those guys. If they really needed an edge, this would be perfect with one of the Ohio State guys. But they have Will Johnson, they have Danielle Hunter, so I doubt they go edge. I think I've seen that they need D linemen, so I think they either go Shamar Turner or Alfred Collins here. I don't really know which one's the better one. I've heard Alfred Collins' name. I've heard of Alfred Collins, so I'll go Alfred Collins to the Texans. I think they need help at that interior D-line to play alongside guys like Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter. Jags at 70, they got a D lineman, they got a receiver. Again, we're probably not going to go tight end here. You could go running back if you don't believe in ETN, because you got Bigsby, but I think they keep those two guys, so I don't think they go Sampson or Scatabo here. They could go safety, and they could go with a Kevin Winston or Sebastian Castro. I wouldn't mind that at 70. You could go with a tackle just to give you somebody, because there is still Wyatt Millum, Marcus Mbow. There's still good players available at tackle. Ozzy Trapelo. So you know what? I'll give them Ozzy Trapelo. I know they have two younger tackles, but I just feel like they could use help at that position. So I'll give them a tackle for depth, because you're in the third round. You're more looking for depth anyway. Texans at 79, they got Alfred Collins. They got Gray Zabel. Is there any receiver? There's still Jalen Royals. I think this is a perfect pick for the Texans, excuse me. They just need depth at receiver, because who knows what's going to happen with Tank Dell. So I think it's just great to get depth at that receiver position. I just feel like they could have had more value at 79 and go with a guy like Alfred Collins or Shamar Turner, and it worked out that way as well. Now we have the Colts at 80, who got Xavier Watts. They got Jalen Walker. I think you go lineman here if you're the Colts, and I think you go with either Willie Lampkin or Tate Ratledge. I'll give them Tate Ratledge out of Georgia. You can't be too mad at a Georgia lineman, because they did lose Will Fries and Ryan Kelly in free agency. So interior-wise, they're pretty much just left with Quentin Nelson. So I like picking up a lineman here in Tate Ratledge. I just figured based on the rankings, because the computer drafts based on the rankings, I figured Ratledge would be available. So I like that value at 80. We got two more picks left here. The Jags at 88 and the Texans at 89. So the Jags, we gave them Mason Graham, we gave them Alek Eyomenor, and Ozzy Trapelo. They could go with another D tackle. There's nothing wrong with doubling up on D tackle, but they need safety, and I see Kevin Winston right here, sitting here at safety out of Penn State. I know there's the injury concern with Kevin Winston, but I feel like when you're in the third round, you could risk that a little more. So I like Kevin Winston to the Jags at 88. Texans, last pick here at 89. They got Zabel, Collins, and Royals. They honestly could go with more interior linemen and go with a Jared Wilson or Willie Lampkin, just because they need help at that position. And again, depth. And I think when it comes to the O-line, late in the draft, it's good to just get depth, because you never know you never know if you hit on a pick. If you hit on a lineman late in the draft, just as depth, it's a great pick. And then if they turn out to be really good, obviously, even better. So I kind of like going interior O-line here for the Texans. Do you go Jared Wilson or do you go Willie Lampkin? Now, Jared Wilson in Georgia, he pretty much only played center for Georgia. And if we look at Willie Lampkin, who's a guard, he's also played a bit of center in 2022. So he gives you maybe a little more positional versatility. So I'm going to go Willie Lampkin here out of North Carolina. I don't know if that's the right pick or not. Now, we'll quickly scroll through so we had the Titans take Cam Ward at 1. Then the Jags took Mason Graham at 5. The Colts took Jalen Walker at 14 out of Georgia. Texans went with guard/tackle Gray Zabel out of North Dakota State. At 35, the Titans went linebacker Demetrius Knight. At 36, the Jags went receiver Alek Eyomenor. At 45, the Colts went with safety Xavier Watts. We had the Texans at 58 go D lineman, D tackle Alfred Collins. The Jags at 70 had him go Ozzy Trapelo, tackle out of Boston College. And then the Texans at 79 took Jalen Royals, receiver out of Utah State. Colts then went with Tate Ratledge, guard out of Georgia. The Jags at 88 went safety Kevin Winston out of Penn State. And then finishing off our AFC South mock draft, the Texans went with guard, maybe center, Willie Lampkin out of North Carolina. Let me know your thoughts and opinions on our AFC South mock draft. We'll obviously be doing the AFC North mock draft next, as they have the second pick. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like and also hit the subscribe button if you want to stay up to date on all our content over here, as it helps the channel out a lot. And it allows you to not miss more. But I'll see you guys next time. Peace.